Sir, please take my baby sister. She's really hungry. A desperate voice on a busy sidewalk brought him to a standstill. He was a wealthy businessman, hardened by loss and consumed by deadlines. What started as a brief encounter with a starving boy quickly spiraled into a journey no one could have predicted. Stay with us as we share today's heartwarming story. We would also love to hear where you are tuning in from. Graham Whitaker was always in a rush these days. Since the passing of his late wife, Rowan, who was the love of his life, work had become his sole refuge. He was dashing toward a critical multi-million-dollar meeting when, just as he rounded the corner, a faint voice pierced through the urban clamor. Uncle, please take my baby sister. She's really hungry. He was halted in his tracks. Standing by the curb was a dirt-streaked boy, no older than 7, clutching a baby wrapped in a threadbare blanket that appeared unwashed for weeks. His cheeks were stained with dried tears, and his small hands shook as he held the infant tightly against his chest. The baby emitted a soft whimper, her tiny face almost hidden beneath the blanket. The boy's eyes, wide with desperation, begged for help, not just with his words, but with every part of his thin, trembling body. Graham's instinct was to ignore it. He had a meeting to attend. However, something about the boy's voice, or perhaps those pleading eyes, touched a hidden part of him buried beneath his polished exterior. The boy's name was Michael, and his baby sister's name was Tessa. Their mother had been absent for 2 days, with no note or explanation, only a vague promise that she would return. Words a 7-year-old boy clung to like a lifeline. Micah had stood on that same street corner for hours, watching the world rush by, hoping that each approaching figure might be his mother. But each time, it wasn't. Graham, uncertain about why he remained at that spot, slowly knelt down, trying to peer through the layers of fear and exhaustion reflected in Micah's eyes. "Where's your mom?" "Kid?" he asked. "She said she'd be back." "But she's not," Micah replied, his arms shaking from holding his sister for so long. Graham offered to buy them food and perhaps contact the police or child services. But Micah flinched at the mention of the police. "They'll take Tessa away. Please don't let them." At that moment, Graham understood he couldn't just walk away. Not now. They ended up at a nearby cafe where Micah devoured a sandwich, devouring it as if he hadn't eaten in days. Graham fed Tessa with a new bottle he had purchased at the drugstore next door, and watching the two siblings, something softened within him. He called his assistant and canceled his meetings for the day and the next. Later, the police arrived, Officers Heron Gates and Naomi Brooks, with jaded eyes and routine questions. But Micah clung to Graham's hand, pleading not to be sent to an orphanage. His voice trembled as he whispered, "Don't let them take us." "I won't," Graham promised, surprising even himself. At the police station, paperwork began. Graham's longtime friend, Laurel Penn, a social worker, arrived to help cut through the red tape. Graham agreed to take temporary guardianship. Just for now, he reassured himself. Just until they find their mom. He took the children back to his home. The ride in Graham's car was heavy with emotion, yet silent. Micah held Tessa tightly in the back seat, his eyes glued to the passing buildings. He didn't ask where they were headed. He simply kept whispering reassurances to his baby sister as she stirred in his lap. Micah stood frozen in Graham's sleek apartment, awestruck by the high-rise view and plush carpet. Tessa whimpered. Graham felt completely out of his element. Over the coming days, he stumbled through bottles, bedtime routines, and the joyous sounds of baby giggles. Micah was cautious yet helpful, always observing Graham with weary eyes, as if bracing for the moment he might vanish too. He offered what he could, his silent companionship, his attentiveness to Tessa, and the occasional half-smile that felt like a rare gem. He effortlessly calmed his sister, humming soft lullabies and gently cradling her tiny head, as if he'd been doing for ages, alone. One evening, when Graham struggled to soothe Tessa, Micah stepped in, humming gently until the baby fell asleep in an instant. "You're good with her," Graham remarked. Micah shrugged, replying, Had to be. Then the call came. Laurel's voice was gentle yet firm. We found their mother. She's alive, but she's in rehab for drug abuse, unstable. Graham's heart sank. So what happens now? He inquired. If she recovers and shows she can parent, they'll return to her. If not, the state takes custody unless a relative or you steps in. He felt a lump in his throat at the mention of adoption and permanent guardianship. Could he really do this? That night, Graham found Micah quietly drawing in the corner of the living room. What's happened to us? The boy asked without looking up, his voice barely above a whisper, heavy with unspoken questions. I don't know, Graham admitted, moving a chair closer and sitting beside him. But I promise you, I'll do everything I can to make sure you and Tessa are safe and cared for. Micah's voice trembled. Will we be left again? Without hesitation, Graham wrapped his arms around him. No, son, not if I can help it. I won't let that happen to you again. He held Micah a little tighter, grounding them both in that fragile moment. And he meant it with every fiber of his being. There was no turning back now, not in his heart, not in his mind. These children were not just guests in his home. They were becoming a part of his soul. The next morning, Graham called Laurel. I want to become their legal guardian, completely. Laurel was stunned, then thrilled. I'll assist you every step of the way. The process was grueling. Background checks, detailed interviews, multiple home visits, and character evaluations that often felt invasive and deeply personal. Each step demanded more paperwork, more waiting, and more emotional labor than Graham had ever anticipated. But he pressed on. He wasn't merely a businessman any longer. He was transforming into something entirely new, a man with a purpose. And that purpose bore the names Micah and Tessa. Once the initial obstacles were cleared, Graham decided they needed a fresh start. He relocated the kids to a house in the countryside, far from the noise and concrete of the city. The new home had a spacious backyard perfect for running, trees to climb, and a porch where Tessa could nap in the shade. Mornings were quiet, filled with birdsong, and afternoons were spent exploring trails and gathering wildflowers. It was not only safe, it was serene. Micah flourished like spring after a long winter. He laughed more openly, asked more questions, and smiled wholeheartedly. He began drawing again, reading aloud, and even constructed a tree fort with Graham's help. He was no longer just surviving. He was truly living. One night, as Graham tucked Micah in, brushing back the boy's hair and pulling the blanket up to his chin, Micah looked up and said, "Good night, Dad." Tears brimmed in Graham's eyes. "Good night, son." The adoption was finalized in the spring. All the paperwork, evaluations, and sleepless nights filled with anxieties and doubts culminated in this one moment, when a judge's signature changed everything. Graham Whitaker was now the legal father of Micah and Tessa Lell. It was official on paper, but in his heart, the bond had already been cemented long before. His once quiet home resonated with laughter that echoed through every hallway, while Tessa babbled her first word, "Duh," a sound that warmed him more than any business triumph ever could. Micah began to emerge from his shell, making friends at school, participating in soccer practice, and even bringing home finger-painted masterpieces for the refrigerator. Graham learned how to braid hair and pack lunchboxes, but more importantly, he learned to listen, to laugh again, and to live for something greater than deadlines and conference calls. This life had come as a surprise. He had never anticipated fatherhood, especially not amid grief. Yet now, he couldn't envision a life without it. It was messy, it was challenging, and it was the most beautiful experience he had ever known. Please share your thoughts on this story. Would you have made the same choices as Graham? What would you do if you found yourself in his position? We welcome your insights in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more impactful stories.